Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to Just Bloom with Kiki Orr. This episode is called Mask Off. If you follow me on social media, you would have noticed that in my most recent post, I had utilized the lyrics to that song Mask Off. And I had gone specifically just to use those words, mask off, just that's it. And then I noticed that it had the lyrics about being on welfare and starting from the bottom. And I was like, oh, that's apropos. But that wasn't my initial reasoning for doing it. My initial calling for that was because I felt in my experience that I needed to unveil. I needed to take the mask off. I needed to be able to tell my truth, because the truth of the matter is, my truth is that for the past couple of months, I had been spiraling. I had been experiencing myself, as may I dare say, being in a depression. And the reason I say dare say, because I feel like that is a taboo word that no one, I don't say no one, because I hate to make generalizations, but that I believe a lot of people don't want to hear or talk about, and that many people have this experience that if you're depressed, then that means that you're necessarily being diagnosed as depressed and you're taking medications. And what I've come to learn is that depression has a spectrum. I'm not talking as a doctor. I'm not talking as a mental health professional. I am just sharing from my own experience and from that of what I've read, and also from what is that I have been experiencing as of late. So, one, it's the holiday season, and I wanted to really not do this episode. I really did. I was like, I'm not going to do this. And the moment that I was having the experience of doing it is when I was in my kind of most darkest moments or most vulnerable moments, but I could not bring myself to do it because I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it, not necessarily out of any fear or thinking about what people would think or say. I just physically could not do it. And that's the space that I was in, of the space of not physically being able to do things. And so what has been occurring for me in the last couple of months is that the inability to necessarily move in the ways that I have been accustomed to moving, the ways that bring me joy and have me be happy and fun and fulfilled. Instead, all I wanted to do for the past few months, a couple of months, I should say, is just come home and just like go to bed. Now, it's clear that I've been doing more than that, in the sense that I've been getting up, I've been going to work, I'm taking care of my child the best that I can. Like, I'm doing all of those things. And so I started to do some reading and research, and I was like, no one really wants to talk about, again, a generalization, really wants to talk about depression, and specifically not that from a Black woman who they perceive to be strong, who one perceives to have everything together. Like, that would be like, no, girl, you can't be depressed. What you are is sad. What you are is having a moment. What you are is this, like anything but that. And so it's challenging. And when I start to do my research, if you will, or my reading, I realized that there are spectrums to depressions, and there's a spectrum that is like high functioning, where you're getting up, you're going to work, you're doing all the things that you necessarily need to do, but it's a fight and it's a struggle, and one that had me feel like I wanted to take my mask off, one that had me feel like I was being fraudulent, that I wasn't being authentic about what I was experiencing and what I was feeling. In part because, one, I don't think people want to hear it. Two, because what I didn't want to hear was people say, oh, it's just a moment. Oh, this too shall pass. And I'm like, that might be true. Oh, you're going to be, or you're going to be okay. And that might be true. And I trust that I will be okay. But in that moment, when I'm sharing with someone, I want them to be able to listen. I want them to be able to embrace and to acknowledge what is it that I'm experiencing in that moment. So let me just be really clear and give some kind of concrete things that had me know that like something is off. Again, if you follow my Insta stories, I had been having a hard time sleeping, and like literally a hard time sleeping. I was staying up to 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. No matter what I did, I couldn't sleep. And even if I turned off the television, I wasn't using that as my mode of going to sleep. I tossed, I turned 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd be up at my time, 7 o'clock. And I figured, wow, you only slept for about 3 to 4 hours. So by the time you get home, you're going to be exhausted. You're going to be wiped out, right? You're going to need to take a nap. And yet I'd get home and that wasn't the case. I was up again to 3 or 4 in the morning. And this was occurring over probably about a month. I've gained a significant amount of weight, about 15 pounds over what I'm accustomed to. Now, granted, I think that during the wintertime, many of us put on weight. I am accustomed to putting on a few extra pounds during this time of year. And yet this was happening before, quote unquote, this time of year. I've had this insatiable craving for like the salt. I was like, I have this true addiction, and I'm kind of laughing because if you could understand this obsession or addiction that I have with these plantain chips that I've been eating like crazy, it's just insane. And then I just wanted to come home and do nothing, like literally do nothing. And in part, so you might be like, well, you didn't want to do anything because you had been tired and you hadn't been sleeping. But even in the moments that I slept, I just could not muster up enough energy to really do anything productive, right? It would take a lot for me to do something. And so, and then I could feel the deepening of the sadness, the self-loathing, the frustration, to the I should be further along than where I am. Why is it that I don't have the things that I want to have? How is it that I am at the age that I am and things aren't where I believe that they should be? And I think one of the things that really opened up for me, or kind of the point when I was like, you know what, something is going on, is when my daughter and her partner and I had gone out after work for happy hour. And I said to them, they're sitting there and they're talking, and I said to them, you know, my youngest daughter is preparing to go to high school. And I wanted to be able to apply for applications for her to go to high school. And I said to them, I haven't done anything as it relates to the applications for high school. Nothing. And so my daughter looks at me, this is my older daughter, and she said, well, when is the deadline? I couldn't tell her when the deadline was. And I couldn't tell her when the deadline was is because I literally did not look to check out any schools. I did no work at all. That is so not who I am generally. I'm generally on top of my stuff. I'm taking care of what I need to take care of. And specifically, if for nothing else, especially when it comes to my children, I do not drop the ball. And for whatever it was, I could not muster up the strength to look, to do the applications or anything. So she takes out her phone and she looks at this particular school that we're looking at. And she signs me up immediately for their open house. And then she looks at another school and she was able to see that I had not missed the deadline. In fact, it was probably about a week out. So I was grateful for that, because in that moment, what I was saying is that I need help. I can't do this. Like, I physically cannot do this in this moment. And without saying it, and she took the bull by the horns and did it. In that moment, I still didn't express to her that I've been feeling depressed. She's like, well, what is it? And I just was like, I don't know. But that was taken care of. So that was kind of one thing that was like, something is askew. And I do, as I said before, I'm on my Instagram a lot. I do a lot of Insta stories, and I have been isolating from that, like a total shutdown. And sometimes people are like, well, what's going on with that? Well, I shouldn't say people are saying what's going on with that, because truth be told, no one asked. Like, that wasn't the case. There was no one who questioned, where I had gone or what had happened to me, truth be told. It's cool. But I'd like totally stopped doing it. And it's because I like, what was I going to say? Hey, everybody, look at me be sad and depressed and I don't have anything to say or nothing to do. Like, I wasn't going to do that. But I was really going through it. So as a high, what I've read again, as a high functioning person that they say has depression, the thing is that, one, it's hard for people to recognize. They don't necessarily see it or know it to be the case. But as we go into this holiday season, what I am finding, again, as I peruse social media, as I read, is that there are lots of people who are, dealing with depression, some clinically, others not so much. Maybe it's through the loss of a relative, a loss of a loved one, a loss of relationships and friendships. There's many things that could have us be depressed. And I could not necessarily put my finger on what it was for me per se. And I think that that's important to note too. Like, just because a person can't articulate why they are depressed doesn't mean that they're not. Just because they can't pinpoint it to be that thing doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Sometimes it's just an experience. It's a feeling. It's like, I think it's bigger than a feeling, actually. It's also the actions that follow the feelings, right? It's they may have a hard time getting up in the morning. Like, my mornings is a struggle bus. And that doesn't matter whether I have 3 hours of sleep or 12 hours of sleep. Like, this, like, oh my goodness, it's hard in the morning. And so I like literally drag myself, the coming home or the isolation. So the actions would be maybe hard time sleeping, the isolation, not wanting to necessarily be around people or to do some of the things that you normally would do. For people that are high functioning, they actually do a lot of their normal activities because, like, that's just what they do. But they then internalize and they go in and, as I said, isolate, sleep, eat, maybe overeat, all of those things. I am not saying, again, that I am necessarily, like, again, haven't been diagnosed as depressed, but I just know what I had been experiencing. And I think it's important for me to share and to take this mask off. One, because I realize that I believe that there are other people that are having these experiences. And sometimes what is happening is that they're doing it in silence. And they're afraid to share with people what they're experiencing, or because we see them to be so strong that oftentimes when they go absent, if you will, no one checks on them because they're like, oh, they're just busy over there living their best life. And that may not be the case. So I want to get, again, to get a little bit more specific and share something else that occurred for me. I was at work one day, and we've been preparing for some training. And it required me to be away from our main office for quite some time. It felt like forever and a day. But I think it was probably just for 2 weeks. But between planning, maybe 3 or 4 weeks, it seemed like a long time. So one day, for a couple of days, the training was adjacent to our main office. So I was over at the training site adjacent from our main office. And I had been texting one of my colleagues, and I said to my colleague, oh, you know what? Tomorrow I am going to come over and have lunch with you guys. Because at that point I had been spiraling in my summation. I'd cried probably really just once. And I'd been talking to my sister, I think earlier that day, and just like, I don't know what's going on. I just know that this is the experiences that I'm having, and I can't seem to dig myself up from it. I was grateful for the ability to show up to work and to do the work. And as a trainer, like, I am putting on. I am like putting on heavy, not just speak. Obviously, I have a job to do. When I say putting on, I need to, in my training, I never want my trainings to be blah or boring. So there's an extra that I give in terms of like energy and a little entertainment so that people could absorb the information and it's not so boring, if you will. So that's a lot of output. So anyway, I was like, I'm going to come over for lunch with you guys. I'm going to come over for lunch. And he was like, cool. So so the next day I go, I stop at Chipotle and I get me something to eat. But while I'm there, I call up and I said, hey, I'm on my way over. I'm at Chipotle. Do you want something? And he's like, no, but let me ask the other colleague. And I said, no, that's cool. I'll ask them. And so I called my other colleague and I said, hey, here's where I am. Do you want something? She's like, no, I'm cool. And I was like, great. So I come upstairs. It's a bit earlier than when we would normally eat lunch. And so I start to get on the computer to do some work. But I do recall saying, so what's up? What are y'all eating? And my colleague was like, she was like, I'm not really that hungry. And I was like, girl, that's okay. You could just eat some air, honey, because I just wanted to be able to like talk and shoot the shit. That's what I want to be able to do. And so nothing transpired. I'm at the computer for about 30 minutes. So eventually I get up and I go inside the conference room to eat my lunch because no one was making moves. About 15 minutes into that, I see the two colleagues come up from Chipotle, that the place that they said they didn't want to eat from, and they go to the other room to eat lunch. Now, granted, I was in this lunchroom while there was a meeting going on, because there was a meeting going on in the room and they were like utilizing the cafeteria, but there was another place where we could eat. But it doesn't have a door. I don't really like eating in it. It's in the kitchen, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, I'll just sit here with them and eat my lunch. And plus, it gave me a sense of some company, if you will. Even though they were working, I could eat amongst them working. So I go to leave. I have my lunch, and then I went to leave, and I saw them. And my heart just like, something compelled me to share what I experienced and what my feelings were in that moment. Some people may think, that's not appropriate. You're in the workplace, like you leave your feelings, blah, blah, blah. But whatever, it was lunchtime and I consider them to be my coworkers / friends. So like, I felt it was appropriate because it wasn't necessarily about work that I was in my feelings about. It was about lunch. So I say, hey, I actually feel a certain way. Like I said that I was coming over to have lunch. I said I was coming over to have lunch. I offered to get something. The very thing that I offered to get, you wind up getting. And then you come back and you didn't even say, like, knock on the door to say, hey, we back up here. You want to come over here with us? And I said, it actually hurt. I'm actually hurt. I needed to, like, I generally don't do that. But for my well-being in that moment, I had to do that. Like, that was like a necessary for me to be able to share what I was experiencing in that moment, because I had been craving connection. I've been craving just like the ability to connect. And even, I don't know what we would have talked about. Perhaps I would have shared what I was going through. I don't know. But like I was craving that. And in that moment, I had this experience of rejection. Now, I know it wasn't, I like to believe it wasn't necessarily personal to me. Still doesn't negate what I felt in the moment. And I was like really happy that I honored myself in that moment. And I felt like I had to honor myself because in that moment, there was no more space for me to do anything other than to be authentic and share myself vulnerably. Because like I was already knee deep in this experience of sadness. And I was like, I can't just add something else on to it. So I gotta begin to let some of this stuff go by sharing very vulnerably where I was. But it was hurtful. But it was hurtful, but it was also in that moment that I realized what I was craving and what I hadn't had and what I needed, and how I was in that moment just being an advocate for myself by saying, hey, I'm coming to have lunch. Like, I'm coming to like talk to you. It doesn't matter if you don't eat in this moment. Like, just be with me. And sometimes people can't hear that. And so for me, as a person who is really a person who can hear when someone is like needing that, and so when other people can't hear that for me, it makes me really, really sad. It hurts. It's like, and it also makes me think about people who have a different, the more kind of clinical side of depression, or who may have suicidal thoughts, or the things that they may be going through, and how like them saying, hey, can you come be with me? And a person not really being able to see how them asking that, or the way in which they ask that, is different from what they've ever asked before, or the fact that they asked that and they've never done that before. So I just say, I feel like I'm rambling, but I think I'm saying all that to be like, we get to be cognizant of the people and really tuned in. But I also don't put that on other people, because I feel like, well, I don't know. I am blessed enough to be able to have a certain level of awareness that like I get to ask for the things that I want. But I think when I'm in those moments, it's hard to do it. It's just really hard. And sometimes what it would look like is when someone says, how are you doing? And I'll be like, I'm all right. I'm okay. Which is polar opposite than what I normally would say, which is, I'm awesome. I'm fantastic. I am great. I'm like, I'm okay. And to have people be okay with me being okay is like, really? So anyway, that's, part two of what I was, my experience that I was feeling. And when I knew that like something was again off. And it reminds me too, as like a Black woman, the expectations of being strong, or not only sometimes do our physical pain go unnoticed from doctors that we see, but like our emotional pains go unnoticed, or seen as attention seeking, or whatever you want to label it. I don't know what y'all label this stuff, but I say that because I also recall going to a doctor one time, and I think I had my back was hurting me, and I am not a runner to the doctor, just like to run. If I'm going to the doctor because I'm in pain, it's because I'm in pain. And I'm not clear on how that pain occurred, and I need to have some relief. And the reason I say how that pain occurred, because sometimes like you could be in pain because you knew that you slept wrong, right? You're like, I'm in the bed, oh, I slept wrong. Oh my goodness, I got this crook in my neck, but I know why I got it. This is going to go away. Eventually I'm going to soak. But then when you have that pain where you're like, I'm not sure how this occurred, and it's been hurting me for like 10 days now, and something needs to be done, then you go to the doctor, right? So I do. So I go to the doctor, talk about this pain that was like, whoo, what's up? And then I remember getting off after he examined me, and it seemed to, from his summation, it was cool. I was going to be okay. I could take some anti-inflammatories, I think Advil, whatever. So I go to get off the table, and I like get off the table like anybody would get off the table. And then his response to me was, oh, by the way you got off that table, I can tell it's going to be okay. And so it actually, that particular situation became very that particular situation had me thinking in this new moment about how, like, just because I appear to be strong, or I am not necessarily hunched over and screaming out, I'm in pain, see me, then you think, oh, she's going to be okay. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm a Black woman. That's what we do. And I don't mean to, I'm not to imply that white women don't do that. I don't know that that's what they do. It's not here or there. I'm just saying what I know as a Black woman is that we push through. That has been something that we seem to have been taught, right or wrong or indifferent, is what we've been taught. So yeah, like I'm going to get up and I'm going to still move through and I'm still going to do the things that I need to do. Doesn't mean that I am not in pain. Doesn't mean my back doesn't hurt. And so to me in that moment, it was a diminishing of the pain that I was in. And I realized how that actually translates over into that of our emotional well-being. Oh, you're getting up, you're going to work, you're doing this. You good. But I also pause. But I vacillate, right? I vacillate because there's this level of, I feel like on one hand, I'm saying we show up as strong, we show up as this, but I want people to be able to see my pain, see my hurt. But it's like, how can I see your pain and see your hurt if you're showing up as not being in pain and not being hurt? And then on the other side, I'm saying that there are moments when I am sharing that I am sad, I'm in pain, and that's being dismissed. So I don't have the right answers for it. What I do know is that I do have a responsibility. And I think when I am in my depression and I'm having my moments of being depressed, that I do share that. I may not share it as I may not articulate it that much, but it will look like, or could look something like, how you doing? And I'm like, I'm all right. So it's going to, I don't know. Or it looks like I'm not on, you're not hearing from me. I haven't texted. I haven't called. Isolation, what's going on is quick words. So there's certain, those are certain kind of signs to show up in that way. So anyway, I don't want to say anyway, like not anyway in a way to dismiss it, but anyway, as it's, I feel like I have pretty much exhausted that part of the conversation. As I began to come out of the depression, what has shown up for me was this experience of, or this internal battle of being fraudulent. Like, I'm like, I know what the problem is. You're not being true to yourself. And therefore you have a constant battle happening. And that is the direct cause of the depression. This is what I'm saying to myself. That is the direct cause. So, for example, I may want to say something to someone or move in a certain way. There's been things that have been happening at work that has been quite challenging. When you talk about dealing with white supremacy and oppression, when I tell you, I'm just going to leave it there. But I've been dealing with some stuff, or having this battle of knowing who I am as a woman, as a mother, just as an individual, and all the gifts and talents that I have to offer. And then on the other side, having this experience of that I'm not living up to my full potential. And so that's the conflict that occurs within me. And then sometimes I get so entrenched that it breaks me down, and I'm down. So I do want to share this next part in terms of what I had been reading, for people who, it says, 8 things. It's from healthline.com, and it's 8 things that people with high functioning depression want you to know. And so, one is that you feel constantly like you're faking this. So I just said that there's a constant like, hey, I'm here, but I'm really not here. I've constantly battled with faking it. You have to prove, number 2 is that you have to prove that you're struggling and need help. Oh, that's a big one. You have to prove that you're struggling and need help. So even though, I can go to work and I can do those things, so no one really believes that you're struggling because it doesn't look like your life is falling apart. So therefore, it's like, you good. Like, you not calling me on the floor, curled up, rocking back and forth. You good, Ma? And it's like, okay. So that's a challenging. So sometimes it's this experience of like, you have to have this like need base and have a certain level of sadness or depression for someone to actually want to support you. And that's quite hurtful and painful. So the other thing is that number 3, the good days are relatively normal. A good day is, being able to get up before being able to get up before the alarm goes off, being able to do the things that you have set or plan to do, and without having this experience of feeling despair. Number 4 is, but the bad days are unbearable. And so I don't know. Well, for me, I don't know that they're unbearable, but they certainly have me feeling outside of myself, right? It's like curled up on the couch, binge watch TV. Yeah, I don't really want to talk to you. Nope, don't want to talk to you. Scrolling on social media for hours and hours and hours. Binge watching, but don't want to deal with you. Sometimes it could even come across as me being snappy at someone, like really moody. Or just not really, more than likely it's me not really saying much at all to anybody. And y'all, if y'all know me, I like to talk, honey. And so when that's not happening, Houston, we have a problem. Number 5, getting through the bad days requires an enormous amount of energy. But I want to roll back to not talking, because there are some days when I am told, like, I'm fine and I don't want to talk. It's just because sometimes I don't want to be bothered. So I'm not saying that, but I'm saying, so that's in the, how should I say this? When those me not talking are for a couple of days, then there's generally something going on. Not like, a moment, I'm not talking because like I didn't get enough sleep last night, or somebody on the train pissed me off, or something like that. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. I also think, I'm just going to also say this. I think that often people don't want to tell people that they're depressed, because folks will start to interact with you differently, right? It's like, oh, does that mean that you're depressed? Like, people can be so ignorant and start acting real childish. Like, oh, so you snapped at me, you must be depressed today. It's like, all right. And so when I did this mental health first aid class, it's very important that they say that you don't go around diagnosing people. And so again, I'm not diagnosing myself. Well, I'm kind of sort of am self-diagnosing. And I don't know if I want to call it diagnosing. I've been depressed, and I think I get to say that without necessarily having to justify the symptoms of what it looked like, even though I already did that 20 minutes ago for 20 minutes now. But like, now I'm owning it and saying, like, I've had in the last couple of months, I've experienced myself as depressed, and it sucked. It sucked real hard. And what I shared 20 minutes ago are some of the ways in which this sucked, and some of the things that I did or didn't do in relation to it. So what else? I want to talk about I think it's important to share the importance of what are some of the things that I get to do for myself when I am having that experience, and to support me with like pulling out of it. I think one is for me to really be cognizant of my diet. I think diet is really important. What are the foods that I'm eating? How am I nourishing myself, nourishing my body? So yes, I didn't even go back to the number 1 through 5, the 8. I stopped at 5 because I'm like, boom, that's what I was experiencing. That's what I'm feeling. That's what it is. And I shared it, and I don't need to justify it with 8 things that you need to know, because I just told you. Diet is really important, is really being cognizant of what I put in my body and how I'm feeding myself, because I think that, we are what we eat, and our food is our fuel. And when I am not feeding myself well, I think that adds to it. The second thing is putting together or writing goals down, and getting an accountability partner, someone to be able to call, to text, to email, to check in with in relation to the goals that I have set, so that I'm on the trajectory for doing the things that I need to do, as a possibility of maybe minimizing this self-loathing or the despair, because like, I'm very clear that I want to do A, B, or C, and I've set the goals accordingly, and I have someone to check in with. So even when I'm having those moments, that I have someone to talk to about it and say, hey, didn't do that, or I did this, and I think it just works best for me when I have an accountability partner. In fact, I get much more done when I can have that. When I have that, not can, because I can have it. So food, accountability partner as it relates to the goals, writing them down. The third thing is, at this stage of my life, is really being authentic. Saying the things that I want to say, doing the things that I want to do, not doing the things that I don't want to do, and not feeling guilty or shamed about it. It just is what it is. Like, people, we talk a lot about, we have one life to live and life is too short and all of that. And I don't think we need to necessarily justify us doing what we want to do or not doing what we want to do based upon the length or the possibility of how much life we have left, because we really don't know. So we just get to do it because we get to do it. And it's quite exhausting doing anything other than. It just is. I often, in relation to my Just Blooming, and in relation to me being an entrepreneur, sometimes I have this experience of I need to be here, and so how can I share this with you if I am not that? And I'm like, boom, this. I think about like Oprah Winfrey, for example. Who else comes to mind? Think of somebody that comes to mind that who has been like in the spotlight, doing what they do, but they've been using that platform as a means to heal them and to support them with their evolution. Like, you've watched them grow. And for me, that is super duper important, because I need to shake this belief that I need to be all the way at the top already before I can support other people. Because the fact of the matter is, I'm calling it fact, but the fact of the matter is, I believe that people connect with people based upon their experiences, their shared experiences. People like to know that they're not alone in things. They like to be able to see how you pull through. And so I think it's hard sometimes to relate to the people that are already up top, if you will. And when they don't share the groundwork that they put in, because then for you, you're like, I don't know how that's possible, because I just don't know how that's possible, because I didn't see you go through it. I didn't hear you go through it. I didn't experience you going through it. And so, yeah, I'm happy that you did it, but you like, how, Sway? How? Like when you hear things like on social, again, I keep referencing social media because I know a lot of folks do that, reference social medias or historic books or stuff. But like, if you're a young millennial, there's people like Super Scent, who has the crayon case, and how she was able to do that. And she shared, like, you literally see her go through her journey, right? Or the young lady who's baby girl, right? You're watching these people, or Yandy Smith, you're watching these people. That's one thing I actually will say that I love about social media, is that people are able to put their stories out there, and you're able to watch them and experience them go through things. I heard Erica, who talks a lot about social justice work. It's just so great to be able to see people and be vulnerable and share their ups, their downs, their highs and their lows. And so for me, I applaud them. I really do. Because I feel like our young millennium, I may be going on a tangent here, but whatever. I feel like our young millennials have this sense of like, I'm just going to listen, see me, hear me, raw. This is what it is. And there's moments where I'm like, see me, hear me, but no, see me, hear me, but I can't see me. And I'm sure that, they may go through some of that as well. But for the most part, I just want to shed that. Like, I get to be my authentic self, not worried about what people are going to think or say. Or I get to be vulnerable. If I want to swear, I get to swear. If I don't want to do that, I get not to do that either. But all for the purpose of being able to have women just bloom. And that's what it's about. It's about being, living your life fully expressed. Being able to step into your truth, whatever that is for you, and whatever that looks like. So, food, nourishment, being able to live your life fully expressed, being your authentic self, mask off. And what did I say? Number 2 was accountability partner. Have an accountability partner, and being able, that will support with being disciplined. So those are things that I know work for me. And the other one, which is super important and I know has been off lately, which is stepping into my, or I should say, my spirituality. So I am a practiced Buddhist who has not been practicing. And so in my not practicing, I want to say that it probably has contributed to where I am right now, because when I am generally practicing, there is a level of, and when I'm practicing my Buddhism, I get clarity on stuff. It moves me to be in action, calms me. I'm able to see the things that I need to see, and I haven't been doing it. And so I get to get back into the practice of being a practicing Buddhist. And I think 5, and probably maybe it should be number 1, but perhaps I should say these are in no particular order. But sharing. When I am having those experiences of sadness, I have somebody might be like, oh, do you go to a therapist? Have you gone to a therapist before? So I have. When my ex-husband and I first, when I had when I had my youngest daughter, shortly thereafter that we were having some challenges in our marriage, and I went to the therapist, but that was for the purpose of couple counseling. And then we went again for couple counseling. So that's going to be another episode. And then I went again then I went by myself when we weren't doing couple counseling again. And I enjoyed it with this one particular person a bit. Anyway, the details are fuzzy right now. But then probably a year ago, was it last year? Or maybe a year and a half ago now, I had gone to another therapist, and it wasn't for me. This was when my godson had passed. My godson actually committed suicide. And then I had, now the star was having some challenges in school, and her dad and I had been going at it. And I just was like seeing some behaviors that were concerning to me. And I figured it would be best for her to be able to have somebody to talk to. So the therapist that I went to said, yeah, she can come, no problem. But she comes, you need to come too. And I was like, that's fair. Not necessarily together, but like I needed to see him as well. Like, she's going to be doing the work, you get to do the work. I don't have a problem with that. I do my work. Like, that's one thing that I will say. I am always doing my work. This is my work, right? This is part of my healing. Therapy is part of my healing. Reading self-help books is part of my healing. Going to transformation workshops are part of my healing. I do my work. I am in no shortage of having done my work. So I said, no problem. And but the problem that I think that I've had in my experience with therapists, and so therefore I need to find another one. So if anyone has any suggestions, is that so often it's hard for people to be like, oh, seeing again, oh, you don't have any challenge. Oh, you good. You good. And I was like, dude, what am I paying you my copay for? Like, I can do this myself. And so I never really felt challenged in any way with my therapist. I never felt like anybody could call me on anything. And not that I would actually like lie to them about anything, because they say there's two people you shouldn't lie to? Is it the IRS and your lawyer? Well, I'm going to say if it's 2, I'm going to add 3. Your IRS, the lawyer, and your therapist. So there's no need for me to lie, but I often just felt like I wasn't being challenged, that there wasn't this ability to necessarily peel back the layers and go deep. And I was doing more, obviously it was my work to do, but like, I just didn't feel like they were doing that part. That's my experience. So I think that those are the things. Again, nourishing one's body, the spirituality, the accountability partner, being your authentic self, doing what you want to do, the way that you want to do it, and therapy, if that's something that you feel like you want to do. And maybe it's not therapy, maybe it's a life coach, or maybe the partner or the accountability partner who's not the therapist, but maybe that's what is necessary for you. But everybody has that. But I think that those are the things that would work great for. Here's another one: exercise. I think exercise and for something about getting those endorphins moving, then those endorphins and moving and exercising. And that made me look like running, lifting weights, going to the gym, or it could look like turning on the music in your house and just like dancing, right? It could look like that. And so that's important too. So I think that those are the things that like I get to do. And even if I did like 3 of the 6 of those things, it's really a start. So, yeah, I think I pretty much covered what I wanted to share. I wanted to share with you that I've been, having this experience. And if you are experiencing yourself as having depression or depressed, know that you're not alone. Please reach out and share with somebody honestly and authentically where you are. It is not to be taken lightly. I do not take this lightly at all. So share with someone. If you know of someone who you feel like is having experiences of suicide, please reach out and have them call the hotline. As we move into the holiday season, a lot of emotions come up for people for various reasons, whether it's financial, again, whether there's a loss of a loved one, whether it's just, some despair that they're having and experiencing for themselves. If you realize that you haven't heard from somebody for quite some time, and that person that you haven't heard from, in your mind, you're thinking, oh, that person is quite busy. I know that person is doing their thing. Think again. That may be the case, but you get to know for sure. Call them, reach out to them, see how they're doing. In fact, I do that. There's people that I follow on Instagram. That happens to be like the people that I follow that are my friends, obviously, who I'm talking about. And I notice that they're quite active and they're on their social media because most of them have like businesses that they do there. And then it'll be nothing, like silence. And it could be because like they are building their business. They're going to this next phase of business. I don't know, but the moment that they get silent like that, honey, I'm like texting, calling, is everything okay? Are you good? Haven't heard from you and it's been about 5 days now. What's going on? Or somebody who rarely posts. And then all of a sudden it becomes something that they're doing constantly. It's not a bad thing, but it's like, what's going on? So I just think that if when your spirit moves you to be able to check in, even if your spirit doesn't move you to check in, be intentional about it because it could be the difference for someone. That's all I got, folks. So this is like mask off. If you've been hiding or having this experience of feeling fraudulent, know that like that's not necessarily because you're a liar. It could be because you have some internal sadness that is going on because you're having this internal battle. I'm here for you. I love to hear what you think about this particular episode. I'd love for you to be able to share your feedback. And again, love on someone, hug someone, call someone, text someone, go out to dinner with someone. Be the difference for someone else. On our next podcast, as a follow-up to this conversation, we're going to dig a little deeper, and I'm going to be talking to Dr. Sunne-Ryse S. Smith, an inspirational speaker, trainer, and author, and spiritual mentor with her new book, Spiritually Woke. Until then, plant seeds and grow, girl.